Hey everybody, and today's guest is Ozeal DeBastos, and he is the owner of Ozeal Consulting Group. He has a wildly successful no permissions needed podcast. His podcast actually has received a very coveted new and noteworthy designation from Apple, and it actually has one of the only 5-star ratings out there, has more than 1 million downloads. This guy is amazing, and I can't believe I get to interview him today. So Ozeal's specialty is actually helping businesses maximize their influence and attention through podcasting. You're absolutely going to want to tune in. You're not going to want to miss this. So Ozeal, before we get started, can you give us a quick background on how you made it where you are today?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you, Michelle, for inviting me to be on your awesome podcast. I'm super excited to be a part of your podcasting journey. And of course, watching you blossom with this podcast. I know you're going to do awesome. I love your energy. So yes, much love. So you're asking me about as far as my background, right?
Yeah. How'd you pick podcasting, and how'd you get where you're at?
Yeah, what got me to this point, 2020. All right. So I am a former break dancer.
Nice.
Slash musician. Yes, I was that guy that was spinning on their heads and on their backs and really performing all over.
So did you do a cover for MC Hammer?
You know what? Yes.
Did you really?
I did a lot of Hammer moves.
Nice.
Yes, Hammer. Yeah, I did all that. Hammer, Kid and Play. Michael Jackson was a huge inspiration of mine.
As long as you didn't do Ice Ice Baby, we're all right.
No, Ice Baby. No, none of that. Hammer time. It was always Hammer time on
Hammer time.
So former breakdancer, musician. So I spent the bulk of my life making music, being a performer. And after my last band disbanded in 2013, I fell in love with this whole online media and marketing world. Started flirting with blogging and creating content, hosting events centered around creative entrepreneurship, and just became super passionate about just creating this lifestyle around creativity and business. And I launched my podcast. My first podcast was in 2015, early 2016. And that's actually whenever there was a surge of podcasting during that time. And then it kind of died out. And of course, now you're seeing this reemergence of podcasting, which has been amazing. And so from there, I cultivated a deeper love for the art of conversation and connection via podcasting.
Yeah, it gets in your blood, doesn't it?
It does. It's addicting.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so much fun too. Like people who haven't figured this out yet, I'm telling you, it's the way to go. I have so much fun getting to chat with people all the time that I would have never gotten to chat with you otherwise. This is amazing.
I mean, point made, Michelle. I mean, that's the beauty about podcasting. Because of podcasting, I have been able to leverage it as a vehicle to connect with people that I look up to. You're going to have the same opportunity. I had the opportunity to interview some of the most amazing thought leaders in marketing and branding, people that I read their books, people that, I would never have a chance to connect with. And now through podcasting, I've been able to connect and meet and build relationships, authentic relationships with some of the people that I look up to. So that's one of the many benefits of podcasting, is definitely these conversations and the people that you get to meet through this podcast platform. So it's been pretty awesome.
So when you first started out, how did you market your podcast?
Marketing my podcast in the beginning, yes. So in the beginning was just sharing the excitement. I think that people read off your energy and feel the energy. So when you come out, and this is what I did, I was just sharing it with my current audience at the time, which was friends and family, right? Mom and dad. And of course, my people on social media. And of course, the more tactical advice and some of the things that I did was I would create video teasers before my podcast launch. So I think a lot of the things that for your listeners, when it comes to podcasting, or if you're launching any platform, is to take what the movies do when they release teasers and trailers to cultivate and build anticipation before the launch. And I think that's something that I took early on. And I learned a lot of that, when I was a musician. and just building that anticipation, saying, hey, listen, I would do audio clips of some of the interviews, that this is a preview of episode 1 and episode 2. So that's how I kind of promoted my podcast, was just kind of making sure that I let my people know, definitely leverage the social media, did a lot of social media marketing. And of course, now with live streaming, there's a lot of facets in online media that you can use early stage podcasters to promote their podcast right out the gate.
So that's awesome. I hadn't actually thought of that. And of course I should have. So let's fast forward 2020. Let's say we were going to do that today. So you do a little video clip and then you upload it onto Facebook, to your Facebook page, and then you send out a tweet pushing them to Facebook, or do you push them to your web page? Or, I mean, where would you push them?
Yeah, I think essentially what you want to do is you want to push them to your podcast where they can actually download. One of the things that I've seen really successful podcasters do is when they do email marketing, they shoot out an email and say, hey, listen, I just released a brand new episode with Michelle, check it out. And then you have a direct link where they can click it. So you want to make sure that you make it easy for them to be able to click and download, have access to your podcast. And that's like an automatic download. So those are kind of some things that I've seen with successful podcasters that I've incorporated. But yeah, using live streams. And hey, listen, hey guys, if your episode drops on Thursday, on Tuesday, do a live stream. I have a great interview with Michelle that's coming up. I'm super excited. We talked about automation, some of the 5 tips to automate your business, your platform. And please tune in. It's coming out at 12 o'clock. Look forward to sharing it with you, because I think you're going to get a ton of value from it. So, doing something like that to build anticipation, to prep the episode, I think it's a great way to early on engage your audience way before the episode drops. So I think using that, those tools online, it's a great way to grow your audience.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And if it makes complete sense to point them to the website, because like on my podcasting website, for instance, there's a, you can just enter your email right in there, and then it'll automatically send you the next episode. And it's just a way to build your list, as rather than going directly to Libsyn or iTunes or whatever.
Right.
If they go to the website, then you can capture the email and you're able to then let them know, hey, this is the next episode. So great point. Hadn't really put those two together.
Yeah, and kudos to you, because a lot of podcasters early on, when I do coaching, they don't understand the importance of building an email list. So the fact that you're implementing an email marketing strategy with your podcast is brilliant, because I tell people the email is the lifeline to your audience. So all these platforms could vanish tomorrow, but your email is your direct line to your people, your tribe, right? So the fact that you incorporate, and of course for our listeners out there, if you're starting a podcast, absolutely, hands down, you have to start an email list, and let people know, like, hey, listen, by signing up, you're gonna be the first one to get notified when this episode drops. And then of course you can add some bonuses exclusively for your email list to make it even more interesting and entice them to sign up. So the fact that you're doing that, and I encourage anybody who has a podcast to incorporate an email list strategy early on. I wish I would have done that earlier, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people who maybe don't know, this is like a completely foreign concept to them, I would check out, if you have a very limited budget, maybe MailChimp is a good way to get started for free. I personally use Drip. And the reason that I use Drip is you can start out for free and the cost grows as you grow. So it's really nice.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
you can automate so many things to make it just, run on autopilot for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So if you're somebody who's just getting started and you don't want to get into the tech side of things, MailChimp's probably a really good free option. If you did want to do a little bit more automation, then I would check out Drip. That would be a good place to start. So so what steps did you actually take to get that 5-star, top rated, coveted Apple podcast?
Right out the gate, Michelle, I landed a few big guests. So that really helped me spike my download numbers. So, the first 5 episodes were pretty well-known entrepreneurs in the online world. So that's a strategy that I used. And then also I went heavy on social media marketing. Again, just building up the excitement, a lot of teasers. I made sure that I really did the heavy lifting in the beginning. So if you're launching a podcast, go heavy on the promo early on. So when the podcast comes out, it's just, you got them hooked, right? You know, they want to stick around for episode 1, 2, and 3. So I think for the first, 10 to 20 episodes, you really want to make sure that you promote them consistently. One of the biggest struggles that I see podcasters now these days is marketing the podcast, right? You release the podcast and you're like, oh, I'm done, and you tweet it out, but just maintaining the marketing aspect of promoting your content is a real struggle for content creators and in this case podcasters. So that's what I did. Just really went out the gates swinging with some big names. Another thing too, Michelle, that it's not talked about in our space that I made sure that I just crushed was just to deliver a high quality interview. Because, and this is a huge tip, because if a lot of podcasters come into this space, and I love the fact that you came prepared, Michelle. I think it says a lot about your integrity and you as a pro behind the microphone. But you can't wing your podcast, because you got to understand this is essentially broadcasting. So people went to school for this, and there's an essence and an art to being able to conduct an interview. So if anybody, our listeners out there, if you start a podcast, make sure that you understand the basics of how to conduct an interview. So early on, those top 5 guests that I had, they would tell me at the end, dude, like, this is like your first 5 this is only at 5 episodes, and you deliver this podcast, this interview like a pro. But what they don't know is that I trained and I really studied how to conduct an interview. So I didn't look like an amateur going into it, which a lot of podcasters, when they come out, they're like, they don't, and I get it. It's a brand new platform. You're getting used to being, in front of the microphone, behind the mic. You're trying to conduct an interview. You're nervous. I get it. Even now, when I get a little nervous every now and then, but you got to be able to be a pro behind the microphone. So that's a huge tip, and that's what I did. And what happened, Michelle, was they went out, because I conducted such a remarkable interview. They went out and said, hey, listen, this is an awesome interview for you to check out. They blasted it to their million, people online, and I got a huge wave of people because I nailed my interview. So that's a tip that people don't talk about. But yeah, if you master the art of the interview, you're going to see a massive growth within your podcast for sure.
So where did you go to learn how to interview well?
Great question. So I learned from the greats. I looked at TV. I looked at David Letterman. I looked at Johnny Carson. I looked at, one of my favorite interviewers is Howard Stern. I know he's controversial, but hey, listen, I've seen this guy just conduct some amazing interviews where people will just close up and not want to say nothing. And then he just uses humor. And the next thing you know, within like 30, 40 minutes, he disarms them. And then they're just crying on the mic or pouring their heart out. That is a master at interviewing. Oprah Winfrey, I believe she's a great interviewer. I like Ellen DeGeneres. I think she's a very comical, casual, conversational style of a broadcaster, of a host. So those are the people. So I make sure that if I see something that I like, I incorporate that. And they all have different styles, but there's certain elements they use, the transitions, the conversation. Like you, I could tell it's very conversational. My style is very conversational as well. Not so scripted. You want to be prepared, but you also want to allow for conversation to happen. So that's where I learned. I learned from that. And I think people, again, this is broadcasting essentially, right? Radio. So I think that if you go to the radio and look for your favorite radio host or your favorite TV host, look how they conduct the interview. Look at them objectively and try to see, kind of pinpoint how they ask the questions and see how they practice the art of the interview, and take those points and bring it into your podcast. And that's basically what I did.
Okay. That's amazing advice. So
yeah.
All right, I have to go back because,
yes.
First of all, I'm curious. And secondly, everybody listening to this is going to kill me if I don't ask this question.
Oh, you want to see my breakdance moves? Is that what it is?
That's it. That's what it is. How did you land those top 5? How did you do that?
Yes. So some of it was relation. Okay, I'll tell you what. So there was 2 strategies. One of them is, and I tell people this all the time, if you want to land the big names, get your butt to the live events. Make an effort to go to the live events and connect with them in person.
So when you
A
say
lot.
live events, what do you mean?
So, okay, so conferences that they're speaking at, or yeah, so I would go there and just build relationships with them. So, I had the honor of a meeting. I don't know if have you ever heard of Derek Sivers? He
Yes.
is okay, yeah,
Yes.
huge. Okay, so
Yeah.
he was episode number 2. He was
Oh my
episode 2.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah, former CEO of CDBaby.com. One of my favorite interviews. And
CD Baby
he
was like crazy for
remember
his
that?
time. Oh my
Yeah. Oh, I
gosh.
know. It was
That was
revolutionary.
amazing. Yeah.
As a musician, I actually, so check this out. I had the opportunity to tell him personally how much I appreciated him making the effort in creating a platform for independent musicians. Because I told him, I was like, I actually submitted plenty of CDs to CD Baby because of you. So
That's
thank you for
awesome.
doing that for us. So that was really cool, kind of to tell my hero, that I really appreciated that he did that. So I met him at I met him at a live event, and then so a lot of those, actually 3 out of 5, I met at live events, and then the other 2, I was tweeting them out. I was constantly tweeting them, building relationships online. So when I went for the ask, they said yes.
Awesome.
So that's another thing too. So if you want to get a big name, engage with them in the beginning, retweet them, comment on Instagram, hit them up with a video message on Instagram. Say, hey, listen, just want to let you know that I really do appreciate everything. Just go and just build that relationship. So whenever you come back and say, hey, listen, I would love to interview you. I have this podcast. Would you be interested? 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes. And that's exactly what I did. So
Awesome.
build relationships, get to the live events, and then of course timing. I think if they're releasing a book or they have a product or service that they're about to launch, uh, look at that. And a lot of the times they want to be on podcasts to promote their service or their book and the product. So that also helps out as well, is to kind of get in there and say, hey, listen, I would love to promote the book that you're coming out with. Would you be interested in being on my podcast? And I would always get a yes. And I still
Yeah.
use that strategy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Podcasts are kind of evergreen, right? Like, you
Exactly.
put a Facebook post out and it's gone 12 minutes later. And but a podcast, it's out there forever. It's evergreen.
What's I'm glad you mentioned that. One of the cool things about podcasting is that if you have somebody who just stumbles upon your podcast, what's going to happen is they're going to go back and binge. They're going to go back
Mhm.
and go back to episode 1. So that's the cool thing about podcasts. When I do interviews like this and I get discovered by a different audience, I'll see a spike. I'm like, whoa, what did that happen? And it's because people want to check out what you got going on. And next thing you know it, they're going back. And I asked them, I said, what happened? Oh yeah, I listened to like episode, you know, 150, and then I just went back and just listened to all of them. I'm like, oh, cool. Well, thank you for all those, for those downloads. So that's another thing about podcasting, is that it's definitely evergreen, and people will binge on all your episodes if they fall in love with the podcast and your message.
Absolutely. It's the driving way to work to read blogs.
That's right. Well said. Well
Right?
said.
A little
Yeah.
bit. So
Yeah.
what's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you on a
Oh my God.
podcast?
So the
Okay, if you can't
funniest,
pick one, I'll take 2 or 3 stories. I
I'll
mean, if
take
you
two.
have to.
Well, I have one that's pretty memorable. It was episode 50 something. And I remember I was conducting the interview, and it was at a part where the guest was pouring his heart out. It got really deep, right? It got really, really deep. And he was sharing this story. And I was just, I was like, okay. And I was just listening. And I mean, he kept on going and going, and it just got more intense and more intense. And I was playing with for some reason, I don't know what, I was fidgety, and I was moving my chair back, right? I was like, I kept on moving it back, and bam! I fell from the chair, and the dude was like, what happened? What happened? And I completely fell backwards. I was trying to like contain my laughter because I was in like the conversation. I was in what he was saying. It was such a like a serious. It was just And he actually started laughing. And I said, dude, I said, I'm sorry. I said, I could edit this out. I just fell off my chair. Out of my chair. I just fell down. And he started laughing. So most embarrassing, funniest thing that definitely. So from there, I just started standing up with all the interviews. I stand up now. I don't even sit down. So anyway, so that was pretty funny. And very, it was embarrassing. But
Yeah.
we laughed about it afterwards. So that was cool.
Yeah, it's always like at the time you're like horrified, and then 6 months later it's
God.
like the joke
So
at every
I
party,
cannot
right?
believe, and the fact that it
Guys
was
aren't
like
gonna
such
believe
an
this.
right, and the fact that it was such an intense conversation. I mean, if it was just like right now we're laughing and I felt whatever, but it was such an intense conversation. I was like, you got to be kidding me! Out of all places, at all points of the conversation, for you to fall off your chair,
It
you
had
picked
to
the
be
most
that,
intense.
right?
I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, man.
Way to pick the climax, man. That's great.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So
That's one of them.
let's say you have somebody who's just starting out in podcasting, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
How are they able to monetize that podcast?
The quickest and just the easiest way to do to monetize your podcast is affiliate marketing. Is signing up, whether your podcast is centered around software or your podcast is, let's say your podcast is about like a daily book review, signing up to Amazon to be able to include affiliate links that are tagged back at those books. But yeah, affiliate marketing is the easiest way. I started monetizing my podcast within the first 5 episodes, just because I was mentioning books. I was, hey, this book is, it's an amazing book. Anything You Want by Derek Sivers, check it out. And people enjoyed it and people clicked on it. So yeah, I was making a few bucks, and it was enough to pay hosting service. So at that time I was like, okay, cool, 25 bucks, it's paying for my Libsyn hosting service. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. So that was a big win for me. But yeah, definitely affiliate marketing is the quickest way. So I recommend and suggest that when you launch a podcast, right out the gate, is definitely have affiliate marketing links set up. And brand sponsorship deals, those are the ones, and those are a little, it takes a little time for you to get there, because they start looking at numbers a little bit, maybe like 5,000 downloads and above, and then you can kind of start piquing interest. However, I've coached some people where they have 20 episodes and they land, $500 brand sponsorship deals right out the gate with just a few episodes. That happens when you're very targeted. When you have a very niche podcast, let's say if it's a fishing podcast and you say, hey, this is a fishing podcast, and I go to local businesses that are about, that are fishing companies and brands, yeah, they're going to say, absolutely. Hey, man, I got, 150 targeted listeners that want your stuff. They definitely, it piques an interest, and they're definitely willing to invest in podcasts, especially now more than ever. I think it was like $73 million of advertising was invested last year in 2018. So that's a lot of money. And
Oh,
that's
wow.
and it's going to continue to grow. So a lot of advertisers are now looking for niche oriented podcasts to market their service and their products. So it's a good thing for podcasters like ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this podcast is kind of like all about systems and things like that. So do you have any systems that you use to help you automate some of the work with your podcast?
I probably need your help on that. So some of the, we were talking about this before we press record, that one of the challenges is automating, and that's something that we're going to continue seeing being a bigger topic in the podcasting, in the content creation world, period. But some of the things that I've used, of course, I use like Buffer, Social Bee to automate my posts. That just basically just blasts into all platforms. Audiogram, which is more like a feature. Are you familiar with Audiogram, Michelle?
No, actually, I
No,
haven't heard
okay.
that one.
So those are like just like audio clips that you can use. So that's more for kind of social media marketing.
Okay.
And then also the Libsyn. Like I use Libsyn for your hosting. A lot of the hosting companies now have scheduling features where you can actually schedule. I'm not sure if you use that.
Yeah, I'm using Libsyn.
Yeah.
It's really nice because then I can record it and like launch it 3 months later, and I never have to think about it again.
Right. You submit the time, right?
Yep.
And then you're just you set it and you let it go. So excuse me. So that's how that's how I do it. But it's just very basic stuff that I do. But just a lot of it's just social media, like Buffer, Social Bee, I know there's things like Repurpose, and of course Lipson. And then I use a lot of the features that are on Facebook to schedule certain things. But I'm trying to get better at automating. A lot of my podcasts are topical. So I know one of the things that with automation, you have to be careful because you want to make sure I can't have an interview and then they're promoting something and I automate it like 3 months in advance when they release it and talk about, you know what I mean? So
Right.
I have to be very, very careful about that. But yeah, it's something that I think I'm going to be using a lot more when it comes to promoting. I think it's going to be huge for marketing podcast episodes for all podcasters.
Okay. So I think you already answered this, but I'm going to ask it again. So maybe you can come up with the second coolest person. Who's the coolest person you've gotten to interview today?
Oh my God. Yes. Okay. So so the interview, so the official interview, I really enjoyed Derek Sivers because building up to that interview, and I've had the opportunity to interview some of the biggest social media names and people that were on Shark Tank and New York Best Time Seller. So it's been awesome to be able to interview some of the most brilliant minds in this community. But Derek Sivers was just a really cool cat that was just, down to earth, millionaire. And he just delivered a lot of great stories. After the podcast progressed, it got really tactical. But going back, and he was episode 2, I think he was episode 2. Going back to him, he was very just story oriented. And he just shared so many golden gems and so many amazing stories. So he definitely is the one that stands out. And then I did an unofficial interview with Tim Ferriss at South by Southwest, which I was so upset. We talked about the funniest and the most like what the hell moment was like I interviewed him. It was for 10 minutes. It was short. It was like, yo, I got to bounce. But he was like, we had a really good rapport. We're talking about wine and cocktails.
Nice.
And yeah. So, and then we started talking about, entrepreneurship and marketing, et cetera. And I was like, yo, I said, can I interview? And I had actually my Zoom recorder, my hand record. I said, can I record? He's like, yeah, man, for sure. He's like, I don't have a lot of time. I was like, no, it's cool, man. I said, I'm heading out as well. So I hit record and he was flowing. We had this amazing conversation. I was asking him questions and it was very conversational. And then I looked down.
Oh, no.
Yes, you already know. Yeah. Walk, walk, walk.
You hit play instead of record.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. The SD card was completely full and I hit it and didn't record at all. So I was very, very upset. I reached out to him online, but he's, Tim Ferriss now, he's super, super busy. He got massive, and I wasn't able to get him on the podcast, but he's, that was one that was just like a big,
one that got away.
A big whammy. Yes. One that got away. So, but that was a cool interview. Because I was in person and I got to really pick his brain and it was it was like two friends. I mean, we really hit it off.
Yeah.
So that was a really fun interview.
And I think that's
the unofficial one.
The unofficial, the one that got away.
The one that got away.
But I think people tend to learn through stories so much better than tactical. I mean, automation. That's a relatively boring topic, right? But when people match it up with stories in real life, all of a sudden it becomes reality. Oh, hey, I get it. So yeah, that had to be, and that was actually one of Derek was one of Tim Ferriss's.
That's right.
Top podcasts too. So.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So he's actually.
Him.
Yeah, he's actually. Derek was such a cool podcast for him that Derek's in Tool of Titans, that the book that Tim Ferriss wrote. Yeah.
Okay. I haven't yet read that book, by the way.
I'm gonna mail you a copy, man. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I know it's massive. All his books are massive. I mean, I've read pretty much all his books except those.
Yeah, but what's cool about Tool of Titans is it's 5-minute chunks. It could be this is a little bit crude, but it could be a bathroom reading book because you can and then once you go through it once, then you just use it for like references. Like I have mine like all highlighted and dog-eared, and I know some people are gonna freak out, but and then when I'm looking for something, I'm like, oh my gosh, what was that quote? Oh, there it is, or real cool book.
Yeah, definitely got to check that one out for sure.
So if you had to pick two people that helped you become the success that you are today, who would those two people be? Could be any space, doesn't have to be podcasting space, doesn't have to be music space, anybody.
Wow, two people, man, Michelle, that's a hard question because throughout my years up to this point, I've had a lot of mentors and coaches. One of them was, his name was Michael O'Neal. He has a podcast called the Solopreneur Hour. And he was about 4 years ago, he was my coach. And he was actually the one who really had me hone in on my podcasting gift. Like I really wanted to hone in on the interviewing. And he was one that really pressed me. He saw, like, he's like, you're really good at this. He's like, but he also kind of honed me in and gave me some really tips. Some great tips to kind of better myself as a podcast interviewer. So he was somebody who kind of stands out and is a huge inspiration. And then, believe it or not, my mother's been a super behind my, she's been down for Team Ozeal for a long time, ever since my, all my music performances. My mom never, because I'm a college dropout. So I dropped out of college to pursue music, and I dropped out at a time where I had like a year and a half left. So everybody's like, what are you doing, man? Just finish up and just do your music. And at the time I was like, look, we had an opportunity to tour and do a lot of shows. So I was like, nah, I just got to do this, man. I'm sorry, I'm just not feeling it. And I've never been a school kind of guy. I've always been this kind of creative, rebellious character who always wanted to pursue passion and creativity and performance, which is the thing that excites me, Michelle, about podcasting is podcasting has allowed me to translate my passion as a musician. I was the lead singer, I was behind the microphone into the podcast. So it just made total sense for me to jump into podcasting to get, my friends say, oh yeah, you couldn't get away from the microphone, man. Of course, you would have podcasted. So, but my mom, going back to the question, yeah, my mom was a huge supporter, never criticized me. She just said, hey, listen, as long as you're doing what you love. And I think she saw the light in me when I was on stage and organizing these events for creative entrepreneurs and all that. And it really was never about the money. I had opportunities to make money and go corporate and never did. I was always kind of like, look, I want to pursue this. This is what I love. I love marketing. I love people. I love connection. I love creating content. I love performing behind the mic. And she never criticized me. And she's always been a huge supporter. And every, birthday, she reminds me, I'm still supporting you 100%. I love you. And so she is definitely an inspiration of mine and someone who's never left my camp. So shout out to Mom.
There you go. You go. Mother's Day. You got to get her a shirt that says Team Ozeal.
Yes. That's a great idea. Michelle. I love that.
My mom was very much the same way. I played basketball through college, and I went to college about 2 hours away. And she never missed a game in high school. Unless we were playing in like Boston or Miami, she didn't miss a game for in college either. And we were terrible. We were like, I'm sure it was painful for her to have to watch. And funny story. So it's my mom's like 50th birthday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do something like awesome for her, because I knew she would be in the crowd. So we went and we got like 50 red roses. And so I had the whole team line up with like all the roses, and we brought her out on court in the middle of the court for halftime and sang happy birthday to her. And she told me later it was the absolute worst thing I could have ever done to her, because I just told the entire auditorium that she was 50 years old. I didn't even think about it like that. I just committed like the ultimate sin.
Right. It's like, that's a 50. Oh, don't tell nobody that.
I'm like, oh, this is going to be so good. And she's like, oh my God, you just told how many thousands of people when I was 50 years old.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So anyway, I would recommend not doing that.
Right. Just
stick with the t-shirt.
Exactly. There you go. That's right. That's awesome.
So if you could give an inspiring entrepreneur just one book to read, which one would it be and why?
Yeah. So many books because I read a lot, and lately I've been doing a lot of audiobooks. But if there's one, man, Michelle, that's a hard one. But the one that was, and you'll appreciate this, speaking of the devil, we were one of the one that really changed the game for me. The book was there was two books, the Alchemist, just because it was aligned with what I was going through as a musician, kind of like this, like, let's pursue your bliss, right? Follow your bliss. But the one that really stood out, that changed my whole perspective on life, was the 4 Hour Work Week.
Okay. Yep. Me too.
By Tim Ferriss. Yeah. Same here. I mean,
that's how I got the bug.
really for you. So
yeah.
So me too. So I think, so for anybody who is interested in seeing this alternative way of living, because I had read books like classics like Rich Dad Poor Dad, and early on I caught the entrepreneurial bug, and I was really intrigued by this whole world. Even before I quit college, and I think that was the catalyst, because when I pursued my music, I was like, you know what, there's that world. I want to be a part of that. And when I read 4 Hour Work Week, I'm like, that's what I want to do. Like, I can't.
It's funny that you said Rich Dad Poor Dad, because Rich Dad Poor Dad was kind of the book that showed me, oh, hey, this is kind of like could be possible, right? And there's a different world out there, right? So you kind of get the, the mind blow moment, right? But then you read the 4 Hour Work Week and you're like, oh my God, this is how you do it. It's no longer, this mind blow moment, it's reality. And like everybody and their brother goes to Brickworks India and hires a BA.
Right. I know, right? Oh, is that easy?
Book, right? Yeah.
And his whole philosophy, and his whole philosophy of like just living life, right? About the fact that, you don't have to wait until I remember the one that stood out was like, you don't have to wait until you retire to vacation and enjoy life.
Yeah. And I think
he really gets tactical. Yeah.
Like that was so huge, was like, it's literally a complete shift in mindset. It's a complete shift in everything that we've been taught our whole lives. Right? From kindergarten on up is, be a good little boy and go to school and get A's and then go get the corporate job and get the corner office and trade your hours for dollars and, get a successful family and you'll be just fine. Right. And then Rich Dad Poor Dad comes along and, throws a wrench in all that, because he's like, oh yeah, my dad was, was he a teacher or a principal? I don't remember. I think he was a principal. And, and he's like, yeah, I wanted to name the book Why You Should Never Go to College. And his like, his auditor or his editor wouldn't let him name it that. No. But then you get, the reality of Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Because you got Tim Ferriss, who read the book and then figured out, hey, look, we can take this little tiny pill and market it online and sell it, and I only have to work 4 hours a week and I'm able to travel the world and do whatever I want. Right. And I remember being in college reading that going, holy crap, that's what I want. I don't want the corner office.
Same. Same.
So,
same.
Sorry,
so you
I went
and
off on a little bit of
no.
But...
See, and it feels good. I mean, I know I wasn't the only one, and I think that book right there, I mean, it nailed it for me. So for your listeners, definitely get that book, because it completely changed my whole world. And after that, I was bitten by the bug and never looked back. I just couldn't look at life the same way. As a matter of fact, I went and I did work a corporate job for a bit, and I was like, no, this is not for me. I can't do it. And I bartended just because I wanted to be around people, but I couldn't do the cubicle gig anymore because of that book. So, and actually, I told Tim that.
Thank you, Tim. You ruined us for life.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. That 4 hour.
Do you ever listen to this podcast?
I mean, he's the man. He is the man. So that's definitely a book that I highly recommend anybody. That one, and of course, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant.
Cash Flow Quadrant.
That was the follow up. That was a great book.
Yep.
And,
Did you ever play the game Cash Flow?
no, I wanted to buy that. No, I wanted to play that
Oh
game.
my gosh, it's like
Yeah.
it's so much fun.
Yeah,
So
it
you
is.
get the board game, but then you can also get like I think you can put it on your like iPad now and play Cash Flow.
Really?
And they have Cash Flow 101 and then Cash Flow 202, which Cash
Okay.
Flow 202 goes into like investing, like if you wanted to buy options and
Mhm.
puts and calls and all kinds of crazy stuff. But
Okay.
it makes it fun. Yeah, there's this little like rat that talks to you and he's like, that was a bad deal.
Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Is he still out? Robert Kiyosaki, is he still putting out content? And
You know, I
he's been quiet
think
after
he's
that.
like outsourced it a lot. So
Okay.
I think he's like joined with other people and he's just putting his name on their stuff. So
Okay.
he's like the Thomas Kincaid of
He's kind of like the back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did, because of that book, I actually did the whole multi-level market. Actually, that was my first business. Actually, before that, I was selling breakdance videos and all that bootleg style. But after that, when I read the book, I started getting into multi-level marketing,
Okay.
which I wasn't successful at, but I did learn a lot about marketing and entrepreneurship. Because I mean, if you want to know about the hustle, I mean, those people
Yep.
hustle. I'm not a big fan of it, but I've seen people that are super successful. But respect, I mean, because those that infrastructure teaches you a lot about, you know, sales and marketing and really being your own boss. So you know, because of that book, I got into network marketing. Again, I didn't have any success, but I tried it out because of Robert.
Like all the rest of us. I think I was in like 2 or 3 MLMs.
You were?
All crash and burns.
Yeah.
But
it's tough.
But I will say they were not failures because the things that I learned from them has turned me into who I am today.
Yeah.
You know,
There you
and
go.
I'd have never learned how to build you know, a web page. I would have never figured out how to
That's right.
I would have never figured out marketing. I would have never figured out all these other things that, you know, as a business owner, you take for granted, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
part
The
of the stepping
education.
stones.
Right. Exactly. No, the educational component is definitely by far one of the reasons why anybody should even consider joining it, because they definitely support you and you learn from some of the best salespeople. So, yeah. So you and I have the same kind of common story. Our background is very similar.
That's funny.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, you know, can't do MC Hammer moves. I'd like, you know, throw out a hip. It'd be bad.
I got you.
Okay.
I got you.
All right.
I got you.
See this? It's like incredibly pale. And
Is
that's that means no rhythm right there.
No, really? You're awesome.
You have to put me on a basketball court instead.
There you go. That's right. Exactly. Okay. Gotcha.
So, all right. So if you could put anything on a billboard, what would it be?
That's a great question. So ironically, it's the name of my podcast, but I'll throw it in there just because it's a declaration. It would be no permission needed, create what you desire and live it. That's it. Because that's kind of my mission is to really help people, inspire people to give themselves permission to do what they love and live their truth. And I think now with the internet and now with the technology that we have, to build these authentic relationships, to be able to create businesses from all kinds, right? Whether it's drop shipping or an online platform or coaching, there's so many things that we can do now that there's really no excuse to do the thing that you love. The education's out there, the YouTube, I call it YouTube University. So if you want to be a musician, you can literally learn how to play a freaking drum or an instrument on YouTube. So no permission needed. It's just a matter of just saying yes to yourself and saying, look, I'm going to pursue this and do the damn thing. So that's my billboard right there.
You're absolutely right. I saw a commercial last week, I think, and it just blew my mind. So this guy, he was a high school dropout, decided he wanted to become a nuclear engineer, didn't have money to go to college. You know what he did? He YouTubed the crap.
Really?
No joke.
Wow.
He YouTubed it and learned everything he possibly could about nuclear engineering.
Wow.
And then just went to college and just blew through all the tests. And I think he did it in like 6 months, a year. He just passed them all. And now he's like working for this like huge company, and he YouTubed it. Yep. So
screw college, man.
That's
YouTube
right.
University,
That's
baby. Right. Put that out. Where'd you graduate from? YouTube University. What? Yeah, that's right.
That's right. It's accredited. It is. It's
right.
accredited.
Exactly. It should be a thing. Come on, YouTube.
It should be a thing.
It should be a thing. I'm telling you.
See, there's your next $1 million idea.
There you go. That's right.
YouTube accreditation.
There you go. There you go. That's right. That's right. Noted.
Yeah. So I know that now you've kind of moved into coaching people on, how to do podcasts and things. And if somebody wanted to work with you, how would they do that?
So you can go and reach out to me at ozealmedia.com, and more specifically, you can email me directly at ozeal@ozealmedia.com, or find me on Facebook. Think Ozeal, THINK Ozeal, is where you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter. And yeah, just simply DM me and let me know if you're interested in starting a podcast. I started the Ozeal Consulting Group about a year ago, and working with a lot of solopreneurs, a lot of coaches, a lot of consultants, people that are looking to leverage the power of podcasting to not only expand and their message globally, but also to build clientele, to use it as a marketing instrument to market their services and their products. So it's been just amazing seeing that. Now I'm actually working with some educational groups here in Houston, Texas, where I reside. And now I'm seeing a lot of my clientele are corporate people, the corporate companies that you wouldn't think would be interested in starting a podcast are now plugging in, no pun intended, to the world of you see what I did there?
Yeah.
See what I did there? They're plugging in because they see the benefit of podcasts, and now more than ever, you know this, Michelle. I mean, you have to have a media mindset to be able to share your message and to really compete in a market it's all about creating content, valuable content, and giving value to an audience. And as a result, you can get clientele. You can build brand awareness, brand authority if you want to be a speaker. And I'm working with actually a speaker now who says, I just want to use my podcast as a way to get better at speaking. What people don't realize is that when you start a podcast, you're learning how to be a better communicator. Like we're learning a skill set here. It's just not like all the results of building brand and all that is amazing and these relationships, but internally, selfishly, if we're learning how to be better speakers, which is the reason why now speakers are saying, well, let me train my voice. That's what you're doing. Let me train my voice to be to articulate my message more so I can hone in to where when I hit the stage, I'm a rock star. So now I'm working with speakers that are leveraging and using podcasts as an educational platform to develop their skill set as a communicator, as a leader. So that's been just amazing to see people come up to me and ask me for podcast coaching and consulting. So that's where I'm at, Michelle, just kind of working with here locally. And I'm going to try to tap into the Latin market as well and see there's different markets all over that are looking to leverage podcasting. So it's only going to continue to grow. And I'm just excited because, voice matters. And I think that now more than ever, businesses and brands need to develop a voice marketing strategy. The fact that you're doing it, and the fact that you can talk about automation and things that can help business owners and entrepreneurs is just amazing platform. And you're definitely going to see a lot of results along with everybody else who I've been helping with podcasting. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. And I think one of the things that excites me the most about podcasting is it's not crazy regulated yet, right? It's still kind of this, even though it's been around for quite a while, it hasn't been, like with, you have Google algorithms and you have, if you're trying to market on Facebook, you have to follow their rules, and there don't seem to be a whole lot of stringent business rules around podcasting. Like you get to be creative and do what you want, and you don't have somebody looking over your shoulder going, you can't call it that.
Right.
Kind of a deal. And so I think, businesses are going to figure that out. They're going to figure out that it's this huge, wide open field that they're able to get their message out there without a whole lot of pushback just yet. So
absolutely.
And so for you, that's like amazing to be able to be in the space where you're able to take those people who don't know how to do it and turn them into just absolute rock star success stories, modeling after what you've done.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. You're seeing a lot of people, to kind of piggyback on what you just said, you're seeing a lot of radio broadcasters and celebrities, even ESPN, big companies like ESPN, big brands are going into the podcasting. They're doing subset, like they're doing sub shows in addition to TV, because podcasting gives them that exclusive platform where they can share something they can't
Right.
talk about because of the regulation on TV. So they're going to podcasts to be like, look, I just kind of want to like loosen up my tie and just talk some, spit. So
Right.
That's how they're going.
I want
I
to be Harold Stern on ESPN, and this is how I do it.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry, Howard Stern. Why did I say Harold Stern?
Yeah. Exactly. So, no, exactly. So that's what it is. And, Howard Stern now, he was the one that was really kind of, he was a trendsetter because he was talking all that mess on, regular, just commercial radio. So he was like, forget this, I'm going to satellite. And he's happy there. I mean, he's not going to jump into the podcast. He doesn't need podcasting. But for others, they go to podcasting, to talk about exclusive content and things where they can be themselves and be creative, as you said, to speak freely. And which is the reason why, I was looking at a list of corporate companies who are starting podcasts, who have podcasts. I mean, McDonald's has a podcast.
Really?
Trader Joe. Yes, it's called. Actually, it's a great
name. What in the world do they talk about on McDonald's?
So, I haven't checked it out, but I think it's called The Secret Sauce, which I think is a great name, killer name.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, it's a killer name. So, but they have a podcast. Trader Joe's has a podcast. Sephora has a podcast. GE.
Okay, I can see Sephora. That makes sense. Like, I mean, but. How are you gonna? I see. I got to check out the McDonald's thing now because I want to know. Now they're gonna teach me how to make a quarter pounder with cheese.
There you go. Exactly. Right. Some exclusive stuff.
I know what they're talking about.
Secret sauce, baby.
Yeah.
So I think it's just amazing, to see companies and big brands jump on the podcasting wagon, not just for the sake of the trend, but because they do see the power it has to leverage and maximize the voice of the brand. So we're going to continue doing that. And as a consultant, as somebody who's super passionate about podcasting, who got in it early on when it wasn't a thing, and now to see it just kind of blossom, take over, and see a lot of people get into the space, it's exciting to me. Somebody asked us, like, what do you feel is going to be? It's saturated, man. Everybody's a podcast. Like, yeah, true. But the ones that are committed to the art form, the ones that are committed to conducting great interviews, the ones that are committed to consistently promoting their podcasts and marketing their podcasts and showing podcasts, and letting other people how podcasting is done correctly. I think those are the ones that are going to stick around for a while. So there's definitely some. You have to be committed, just like any other platform. So it's exciting for podcasters, which I'm excited for you. The fact that you're on this, and it's what, episode 3? You said? Did you say?
This is episode 3.
Episode 3, yeah, baby, yeah.
You made the top 10.
I know. Yes. I want to be that cool dude when somebody asks you, like, who's one of the cool interviews? You're like, I met a break dancer, musician.
That's right. I met a guy who fell off his chair.
Fell off his
climax.
chair. Yeah, exactly. I want to be that one. I want to be mentioned. But no, all jokes aside, I think this is awesome that you're doing this. So.
Oh, thank you. Hey, Ozeal, I know we went a little bit over time, so I just want to thank you so much for taking the time. And I know time is probably our most valuable asset. And so you have dropped some crazy, incredible knowledge bombs on us. And so hopefully everybody that listens to this is able to take those golden nuggets and implement it into their life, and hopefully get a hold of you and be able to move and grow.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So everybody, just one more time, don't forget, you can catch up with Ozeal on his website at ozealmedia.com. That's OZEALmedia.com. And we will see you guys next time.